Have you ever heard the saying that goes something like, when you get older, don't meet the people you looked up to when you were younger because they'll surely disappoint? Well, way back about 2 decades ago at this point, when I was working towards my undergraduate and MBA degrees, professors would obviously cite contemporary business news to clearly connect academic lessons with real-world applications. But specifically, I vividly remember marketing professors discussing aspects of the Super Bowl beer ads, and my corporate finance and strategy professors extracting insights from the mega merger between and subsequent integration of Anheuser-Busch and InBev. And there's a common thread between these two core memories. Until the recording of this podcast episode, I had not met Dave Peacock, but analyzed many of his decisions in the late 2000s and early 2010s when he led marketing and then became president of Anheuser-Busch, which likely subconsciously helped construct the foundation of my unique strategic perspective surrounding the CPG industry. And since the meeting happened spontaneously, you'll notice I was in listener mode more than I'm normally within these conversational content pieces. And it's probably because, unlike that saying, these stories and insights shared by Dave Peacock from his time at Anheuser-Busch and the grocery store Schnuck Markets to currently at Advantage Solutions did not disappoint at all. But before jumping into these interesting topics and many more, I wanted to quickly provide some additional context. For anyone watching the video version of this podcast episode, you might notice one, the background is different, and that's because it was captured on site at the Beverage Forum. But two, I have a co-host, Dino Sardi, who, along with Danny Stepper, graciously invited me again to the new era of this prestigious gathering of beverage industry executives, where I focused on helping them launch a new podcast called Poor Decisions. So do me a huge favor and follow the Poor Decisions radio handle across all social media platforms, as the podcast will feature weekly episodes unpacking the untold stories behind the world's most iconic and emerging beverage brands. Also, an extra special thanks to Cognizant for not only being the title sponsor of the Beverage Forum 2025, but supporting this awesome piece of content. Whether you are a professional like me seeking cognitive performance or an individual focused on maintaining mental sharpness, Cognizant resonates with everyone striving for brain health. As the gold standard for acetylcholine, Cognizant is not just about supporting memory, it's about embracing life to the fullest. Learn more at the link in the description. But without further delay, here is the recent conversation we had with Dave Peacock, CEO of Advantage Solutions.
So I'd love to hear about your career.
Advantage. I think you guys
A lot of people know that's your middle name.
Yeah, exactly. My last name was Dave Advantage. I changed it to Peacock. The screening I thought was cool.
For confusion.
My aunt and her, it's actually sad, she's passed away, but in her dementia, she literally followed my career through AB when she didn't have dementia. But then she was watching something on Peacock. My cousin told me this like a year before she died. She's like, Dave's doing really well. I mean, he's just taking off. I've got this thing on my phone. Like, she literally thought it was...
Oh, the app?
Yeah. I'm like, I'm killing it. I've got a network. I've got content.
Content is king.
It's like the opposite of, I always felt bad
I'm
for
like, I don't know how that happened. So
I felt bad for everybody that had the name Alexa, and then like that came out, and then from that point on, like your name is.
And there's a buddy of mine. There's a funny story where he bought an Alexa, but he had a dog named Alexa. So he's like, Alexa, fuck out. And it's just,
that's the worst. Everybody just starts talking.
Right,
What do you
exactly.
need? So what I'd be interested in, Dave, is when I met you, you were CMO for Anheuser-Busch.
Yes.
It was just before the InBev acquisition or transition, whatever you want to say. How did you come up through the ranks at AB? Was AB your first role?
Pretty much. I started at an ad agency. So when I was at University of Kansas, I interned at Darcy, Macy's, Benton & Bowles. This is like a history for me. Like, most of the places I work don't exist anymore, which is really sad because I worked at Darcy, Macy's, Benton & Bowles, big agency, got acquired. I interned there. They offered me a job. I worked there 2 years, dying to go to AB because I grew up a St. Louis guy, third generation. My grandfather washed bottles on the line.
Well, there was a lot of like
yeah.
St. Louis-based soccer kids that grew up working at Anheuser-Busch.
And my dad, I'm not a soccer guy, but my dad worked there for a while. So got in at AB in marketing, worked in retail, worked in media because we handled all our media in-house, then retail marketing. Got my MBA and then jumped over into like finance and picked up some operational responsibilities. And I think I made a presentation and August the 3rd liked it. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're going to do this and this and this. And
pulled you out of the choir.
Exactly. And so, I mean, there's a little bit of luck like it always is. And then just trying to be like prepared and on top of things. And then and curious. And as I tell anybody, because I've had a weird career, like just try stuff. Like they would say, hey, we need someone to run procurement. Okay. So I had global procurement when I was 36, 37.
Wow.
Yeah, I had IT. Like no, I always said I had the basket of stuff nobody wanted. They called it business operations, and I learned a ton. I had a ball. And then August, I say I'm having problems in marketing. I want to put you back in marketing. I'm like, great. What role? CMO. I'm like, what? And he wanted just more organization, and that's when we launched Bud Light Lime. He kind of wanted a more disciplined innovation process than maybe what we had.
Well, and even though the Bush family, their ownership was, diminished over the years, but it still ran like a family business. Like,
it was a family business.
I mean, you were in the middle of the third and the fourth, right?
Yeah, because I was the fourth chief of staff, but sort of appointed by the third, although the fourth obviously agreed. And
one of the coolest nicknames in the beverage business, by the way, ABIV is a pretty cool nickname.
ABIV, and then the third, and in the company known as the grinder, because he just, you didn't want to be unprepared in a meeting. But yeah, and got to be involved with them in good and bad times. And then as the company got bought, I sat in every board meeting, watched the whole thing, kind of was involved in it. And that was where I say, like, the company, so AB kind of went away is what it was and became AB InBev. So it's no longer what it was when I first started, but I was lucky enough to kind of stay on. I had gotten to know Brito when he was running Canada, before he became CEO for InBev, and not many people knew him. And so when we were getting to the final stages of negotiation on the contract, I kind of got thrown to say, hey, well, you know him, and so work with him. So we worked out the final deal details, and I thought I was gone because it was a little heated.
Yeah.
And 3-4 months later, he's like, hey, I want to make you president for the U.S. And I'm like, he's like, I like how you fight for your company. I'm like, okay, fair enough. So,
well, what a culture change that business went through.
Oh my God.
You know probably the truth of it, but the legend I heard was at the final meeting, the fourth showed up in an SUV with like a dozen lawyers, and Carlos Brito showed up in a cab, carried his own bag.
No, it was never.
This is like a Netflix movie.
No, so exactly right.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's brought up, by the way. So trust me, there's a few guys I know in the writers and content guys. They're like, we should do some kind of scandal around just beer in general, because there's, even the Heineken story and Freddie Heineken, there's a story around all of them, but no, there's probably more drama that probably applied to it than that. August 4, ABIV, the fourth, liked, I think, a lot of the InBev guys and the guys on the board, the 3G guys, and vice versa, and they were actually really intrigued about bringing him into some of the other stuff they were looking to do.
Oh, interesting.
Which Burger King followed kind of pretty fast after. Then they bought Heinz, it turned into Kraft Heinz, etc. But yeah, it was fascinating. And I always say I worked for two companies, 16 years at Anheuser-Busch and 4 years at Anheuser-Busch InBev. They were very different. And, AB was already, we were 49 share. And I was 90s and 2000s and, kind of the heyday, but also starting to wane.
Yeah.
The boondoggles and stuff in the 90s were incredible.
Yeah.
That was going away.
Well, I caught the tail end. I took a ride on a couple AB planes, and I was in more than one AB suite.
Yeah, it's all fun.
I kind of caught the tail end.
And they haven't gotten rid of all of it. They still have like some of the pretty nice parties at Super Bowl and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
the acts I saw. Yeah, my goodness.
Right.
The 3 years I was with you guys.
Like unloading beer. I remember we were at Kesha's performing. Pipple's up next, and he's helping us unload beer with Matthew Stafford at the Super Bowl. This was the stuff I'm always like,
You're like, this is my life.
Write this. Like, I remember we're watching, I can't remember watching something after a show, and it was like Paul Rodriguez, who was a comedian, and the What's Up guys, and like I can't remember, like Mike Tyson, like sitting around the TV. I'm like, where do you get this group of people in one place?
Now,
only at Anheuser-Busch.
I feel like now I'm curious. I'm going to derail this a little bit.
That's
and
cool.
I'm thinking about, like, you said the What's Up guys, like, out of all the campaigns that you were a part of, do you have like a top one or two that you just are like, that was, even if it's maybe, maybe not the masterpiece, it was just,
What's Up was pretty good.
Just
because that was a director reel that got sent in raw, and Bob Blackie, our head of advertising at the time, liked it. And I think August 4 liked it, and August like, no, let's use those guys. And people are like, really? And they used the guys that sent the director reel in. And one of my favorite stories, because Dr. Galakowitz was an ad that became popular, and they did a spoof on Krzyzewski during the NCAA final, and he's like, Kruzerutski, and they just kind of, it was on Letterman. Eddie Jemison, who, what's the movie? Ocean's 11 and all that. He was in all of them. So I believe he worked at a Crown Books in Chicago and was like kind of a fledgling actor. And we had a creative at DDB, Needham at the time, who really loved this idea. And she's like, screw it, we're going to shoot it on spec. So they went to, I don't know, it was Midway or O'Hare. And they grabbed the guy who was the limo driver. They get a limo. And they just, hey, someone knew like Eddie's sister, and like they got Eddie. And they shot this, like hoping just to get it to be reshot and cut. And they put it together, and I think give it to our guys credit. They're like, no, let's use it.
Wow.
And it kind of, you look at what happened after that. It became like 5 ads or 4 ads after that. Eddie Jemison took off with Ocean's 11, and it just went crazy. So that was sort of the days of, wasn't a ton of research behind stuff. There was a little bit of gut involved.
Question for you about the transition. So, I know that a lot of team members got packages. A lot of them were really lucrative, and they kind of get worse and worse. But you sort of oversaw a lot of your generation leave the business.
Yeah.
How was it for the wholesalers?
Wholesalers were struggling. It was an entire group of people they knew and saw, and so they watched them leave. And there was some generational aspect to it, right? We had our strategy committee, which was our highest group. Me and another woman were the youngest people on that committee, and I was like 39. And I think she may have been around that same age, maybe 40. And then it was people kind of mid-50s and older. So they were thinking in retirement anyway. And just sped it up. But it's a lot of institutional knowledge walking out the door. So I knew there was some good talent kind of next level down. And then myself and Evan Athanas, who's one of my best friends still, but he was our head of sales, just did everything we could to kind of get wholesalers to kind of wrap their head around this idea. I said, look, we were a public company that the Bushes owned 2% of. They ran it like with an iron fist, but they own 2% of it. This is a group that owns with the European and Brazilian, 50%, and they're invested. They were flying around visiting markets. They're in, So I said, much like you guys are with your businesses, these people own the company. So may not like everything they want to do, but you got to respect that they own this company. They bet in the fall of 2008, as the markets are melting, $52 billion in cash on us, which is insane.
But what's crazy is that number kind of sounds small when you think about what's happened recently.
Look at Monster.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Monster's more than that, And at one time, we, I think years and years ago, I don't think Rodney would be offended for this to be out there because, we flirted with buying them.
Yeah, I remember.
For a much, much smaller number. And, our board pre-InBev couldn't wrap their head around it. And I kept saying, it's high velocity beverage, C-store strength. This is who we are. It's but it's not beer. I'm like, I know, but trust me, this is going to be a category that does this.
Interesting how that's just stayed consistent even all these years later. The missed opportunities.
We showed this chart. It was I don't know, I'm probably off, but it was 0.5% or less than 0.5% of the CSD category energy was at the time. And I said, if it just gets to 1, it's going to more than double. Not many categories are going to do that, and obviously now it's much higher than that.
Yeah, no, when we were doing non-alc work for your team, we were with David English and Brian Bella Braddock, and I remember talking to Tom Burkemper, and he goes, "We're looking at Monster," and he goes, "Nobody around here can wrap their head around $2 billion."
Yeah, it was like, it was 4. It was 3.5.
Okay.
Still, it was just I was just this is such a, it's a high price at the time for what they were earning, but I'm the growth potential is huge.
Yeah.
I said this would be the 3rd most valuable brand in our portfolio behind sort of, at the time, Bud and Bud Light. And because Mick Ultra was still small. We launched it in 2002. So, but now it's its own thing.
So sort of a different question. The only reason I'm asking is because you and I kind of talked offline about it a little bit. I've seen a lot of guys go from working for a supplier to then becoming a buyer.
Yeah.
I've never seen a guy go from president of a supplier to president of a grocery chain. How do you make the move then to go into Schnucks?
I was on the board, so it's a St. Louis-based company. I was on the board. I'd known Scott Schnuck real well. Got to know Todd. I knew his sister Nancy real well. And it's a private company board, and they wanted outsiders. And after a couple of years, Todd was made CEO, and he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to work as CEO and COO and president?" And I remember going home. I'd not worked, I'll call it traditionally, because I'd been acquiring multi-unit franchises and other stuff. And I remember my wife's the kids were in high school then. She's like, "You're probably bored. Why not do it? It's consumer." It was great. I mean, I tell people to this day, and it's no knock on my current job or others, but the 4.5 years there were probably the best I'd had in my career. I mean, and even going through COVID and seeing kind of the best of people, I said the 80% of our staff that showed up, in mid-March when everything was falling apart and just put masks on and just did their thing was amazing.
What's got to round you out incredibly, because when you sit down and talk to a guy like Buster Houston, you're like, well, I've run a grocery chain.
I just want to tell you, like, how many power outages you guys have in the last week? He's like, 7. It's just the stuff that goes on, and like what goes on with the power outage. DM gets notified. This is what happened. Like everybody kind of follows similar protocol. And that's anything that you think can go wrong will likely happen at a grocery store.
Well, and the other thing too is like AB in its heyday, like that business, and to this day prints money. Grocery stores operate on 2% margin, 3% margin. Like that's got to be a culture change for you.
It was. Well, it's funny because, by the time I left AB, we were up at the 40% range in EBITDA margin. And, that's big for the 3G guys, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they know how to do this. And I remember Brito came to a Schnuck store and I met him there. He was with Bob Gamgert from KDP. And he was asking about like, well, how do you guys manage costs? And like, do you guys do ZBB? I go, Brito, my EBITDA margin's like 4.4%. Like, trust me, you have no idea how cost conscious we are. So he was fascinated. He's just like, I said, you should be benchmarking retailers. If you want to get cost management culture into your business, benchmark a retailer.
I thought it was $5 for a sandwich. You tell them when they got to pay for their own sandwich. That's how you bake in a culture.
It's part of it, right? No, I mean, it's we used to say like, oh, we'll give them 10% off private label. I'm like, 10%? That's it? For our teammates. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So then how we kind of reconnected was Advantage.
Yeah.
Danny and I were so excited to do a deal with you and your team on merchandising. And for people that don't know the story, Danny and I were running a little regional merchandising shop, and we thought we could do it, national. And we realized, well, we're trying to do 6 other things national, and we're both in our 50s. Like, let's find a partner.
Why hire a bunch of people doing this when there's maybe someone out there?
Yeah. There's already guys that do it better. So I think we really sort of worked together to say we've got amazing insights into what's happening in emerging. Your team is big and efficient and can cover every zip code in the country. Why don't we collaborate together?
Yeah.
But I totally don't understand the way your business operates. So how do you describe your business to people that you meet at a cocktail party when you look at the verticals and the different sub-businesses?
I mean, it is brutal. I mean, we basically, when I try to, analysts who cover our stock don't understand our business as well as I'd like. I mean, I always say we have two capabilities. We call this one network enablement, right? So and you guys are similar. We sit between CPG and retailer. We sit between contract manufacturers, 6,000 of them, and retailers in our private label business. And we enable, right? Just like you guys do, right? For founders and what have you. And then we've got outsourced labor at scale at retail. So we do that for CPGs and the work we do with you. We do that for retailers and work we do for Buster, like shelf resets. When they have a remodel, they need to clean out that store and then refill it. We do that work. And then we do it with some insights teams with retailers like he talked about on stage. And then we're all the sampling. I mean, we do Albertson sampling, Costco, Walmart, Target, Kroger. And so all those samplers are mostly part-time hourly employees that work with us. So 70,000 people.
And then how does something like Damon's bolt on?
So that's the private label piece.
That's
so
private
label.
Okay.
That's in that network kind of enablement. So we, when I was at Schnucks, the best way I describe it. So when you're at Schnucks and you have you want to get to 6,000 SKUs across all your categories in private label. Hard to do when you're a small subscale retailer. So you hired Damon, we embedded 6 people or so. They had like 1 or 2 from Schnucks that managed them. And because we've got centralized sourcing, centralized product development and QA, we can handle all that work for them. And a small retailer, mid-sized retailer can have the private label portfolio of Publix or H-E-B or anybody else.
And then what do you see in your business? Because like you were talking about this, that, before you got to Advantage, consolidation was already sort of underway. Yeah. And it feels like there's not much left to consolidate. So where do you see the future of this? Is it becoming like the Coke and the Pepsi? There's 2 big players.
Yeah, there's the Coke and Pepsi, but there's some really good. I mean, and I'm open about it. I mean, they're really good either regional players or players that have a little bit of emphasis on a specific channel. So like I mentioned, CA Fortune, they're kind of known as natural specialty, though they can do more. Is an example of a player that's kind of emerging and doing really well. And they're actually have been rolling up really, really, really small, and have created a good business with it. So. I don't see a lot. It's now kind of how do you bump out capabilities? And as we look at our business in that network effect space, are there things we can be doing that we're not? And we probably have some areas and channels where we're not strong enough that we could get better. but then that outsourced labor at scale, if for retail, there's probably a ton that we could be doing. And we've been talking with retailers with some success on supporting them with DSD, because we all know DSD comes in, they kind of do their thing, things get bought down. How do you leverage workforce we already have there to support them, to inventory verification, all kinds of stuff.
So you said something that struck me. So Danny and I run a broker business, and it's bespoke, it's boutique.
Yeah.
You got 6,000 manufacturers. How does a small brand become your 6,001st manufacturer?
We're getting better at that, and frankly, part of the reason we partnered with you is I think, and we've brought a little bit to you guys. We need to bring more. I mean, I said, look, let's be good at what we're good at. So we're probably not as good at small as we'd like to be. We've got a division we acquired. And they do pretty well, and especially in categories sort of outside what I call beverage and snacking. But I'm like, you guys, and beverage and snacking, by the way, is where there's just explosive growth and innovation, and you guys know that's in and out. So I'm like, guys, we just work with LAL. Like, this is, and so what I'm looking for long term is that to be kind of a very mutual relationship. As those come to us and we do get outreach, we're sending them to you, and then vice versa. As you've done great, like, hey, connect us in where we can help scale some of the merchandising opportunities.
And in that outreach, though, like, you guys kind of become buyers. Like, because Danny and I, we look at ourselves as buyers. Like, do we want to invest our time and treasure in this brand?
Right.
Because we can't do 6,000. Right. And I imagine you look at it and say, well, I can't do 10,000. I've got to be sort of choosy.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you got to have you got to really believe in the founder. I'm sure. I mean, Danny and I've talked about this too. I mean, if it starts there, and if you don't think the founder has both the right mindset as it relates to creating some differentiation in the market. And I always say too, they have to have an openness to an exit strategy, because if it's sort of a path to nowhere, I mean, we've all seen the curve, up and down.
Some brands faster than others.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then also just be good listeners, learners. I mean, and because you guys bring a ton of knowledge, so don't, push back when you guys are saying, look, here's what we think you should do. Is a great example. I mean, if I was just talking to two young founders that I invited to have here, that are tied to a very close friend of mine, and I said, like, meet as many retailers as you can, and talk to the LAL team, and just ask questions and learn, and then find any founders. So they sat and met with, I don't know, Jimmy DeCecco's here, somebody from Supercar. I'm like, you'll soak it up. Jimmy's made more mistakes than you can even think of at this point. He's willing to share.
Yeah.
So,
I was thinking in a sense of, when you're picking some of these brands that maybe are a little bit smaller or earlier in the cycle, how do they get the most out of what you guys bring to the table? Because obviously, as they scale, I think a lot of that becomes more efficient. But is the opportunity in the efficiency of getting, if it's data, or like, is there something where, like, it's not just a sledgehammer that hits everything? There's more of that surgical area where, like, you get these earlier stage people in there that they know what they're trying to accomplish, but they don't need everything right off the bat.
Right.
And the way for them to be successful is to give them only what they need in the ways that they need it. Like, is that the opportunity? Because I think the food and beverage space specifically, I mean, there's rocket ships, and I think you guys want to bet on the right ones, but not every one of the ones, just because they have great sales data, are the right ones. You kind of have to pick and choose and decide those things, and you end up getting too big sometimes, where then those guys are out of your wheelhouse. Like, they just don't make sense anymore. Is the opportunity to get, like you said, the consolidation downstream into that kind of earlier stage? Like, can you get the capabilities of people that can vet that stuff, that understands maybe the game today, that how are they using TikTok, how are they driving things a little bit differently? Because though it's still, I would argue, mostly the ground level fighting in food and beverage, you still have to understand, how do you do the air attacks, the digital, how do you a lot of that stuff. I think the vetting process changes, and like, my question is mostly around, like, how do you serve those properly, I guess, is like, is it through partnerships with these guys, of like, because they're maybe a little bit able from a cultural standpoint to maybe service some of that, or is it something where you guys are building capabilities in-house to be able to deal with some of those early stage people?
We're building a little capability in areas, I would say, that aren't connected to what LAL does, as an example, because, like, you guys do it like that, you're a partner. That's the way I look at that. And then we do have some early stage venture funds. So Boulder Food Group, who I worked with in my previous job before I joined Advantage, we put some investment in there, and we're connected to those guys, and leverage that with Tom and Dayton to understand, like, hey, we may not be the source of support for all their brands, but as they start seeing some sort of winners come out, because they invest early stage, they'll come to us and look for services. And you're seeing it in personal care even, that's where they've kind of leaned part of their portfolio. We've got a couple of relationships like that just help us screen a little more intelligently. And then we're trying to do it a little bit partnership with retailers too. I mean, you got retailers that are a little better at it than others. We met with Sprouts earlier today, and I don't know, there's a retailer that's kind of better at, foraging, stealing from their own language. And so, hey, can we partner and say, look, let's do something together? Because it can be super successful at Sprouts, but it can't just be successful at Sprouts. Like, it's got to, for it to have relevance, and I think for Sprouts even to have benefit long term, they have to see that, like, hey, it can grow from there.
Yeah.
So
because it's tough to, with the barriers of entry lowering, the quantity of players, and they all look the part, a lot of times, and then it's hard for you to go through the typical vetting process of, like, am I betting on the jockey? Like, can I talk to this guy and see if he's made for this or not? Like, I think sometimes the game has changed to a point where maybe you need that farm system, some of those incubators or some of those like venture funds that can go, hey, we've pushed them to a point where now you could pour gasoline on this and go with it over, you having to sift through all that, because that in itself is probably very cumbersome from a resource perspective of, like, just trying to, there's, you type a non-branded search term in Amazon in any category and you got 10,000 things. Like, how do you know?
I know.
Who's going to break through?
And that's the dilemma for us. Exactly. And they're not all, I'm pretty close with Cat Cole. We're personal friends, and they're not all athletic greens.
Yeah.
And we're helping them, and you build up hundreds of millions on DTC, and then, hey, would you help us with Costco? Sure. That's fairly easy. Guess what? They know about you already. And now we can help them with the wiring and sort of how to think about packaging and what they should do there. And when we did, and we partnered with them, and they're going to have a very successful launch at Costco this month, or this coming month. But they're not all like that. And so, to your point, we still bet sometimes, though.
Yeah.
I told our team, look, I want you guys to be nimble a little bit, like Deb said on the panel. You've got to have a culture where you're willing to fail a little bit. And so, we take a stab at some products and brands that aren't going to work, and we learn from it. But that's part of the game. We try to do it in areas that we shouldn't do it where we don't have to. So, like I say, snacking and beverage, we have you guys. You guys have just better instincts and understanding of that space and knowledge of founders. Why would I mess around with it? So I've been telling my team, and stuff will come in, I'm like, send that to LAL. They'll tell you if it's worth it, and we'll just work it through them.
Yeah. No, and we appreciate it. Like, it's becoming a real good relationship.
Yeah.
Kind of my final question for you, and it's just because I'm curious.
Yeah.
Like, when I hear you talk about having 6,000, manufacturers, you guys do business across so many categories.
Yeah.
And I would never ask a father who's his favorite out of 6,000 kids. But what are the categories that you're looking at that are super exciting?
I beverages, because I'm born in it, right? We when I was at AB, we took from beer to bringing in some NAs, because you guys worked with us. And I said it on stage. I do believe Gen Z and the younger generation, my kids in their 20s, they do drink a larger percentage of their calories than I did, right? It's just sort of and I'm finding myself where I'm doing protein shakes and I'm just doing things differently. Honestly, it's going to sound kind of goofy, but like, I think frozen has been interesting, and that sounds like frozen, really.
I met a guy who said frozen's the new fresh. I'm like, isn't fresh still fresh?
Well, it's two reasons. One, you're seeing attribute based. So Kodiak opened people's eyes to the world. You're seeing now Premier Protein kind of slip into that space, working with Brimwood Partners. You're seeing, ice cream, but Yasso, and just different kind of product profiles coming into the market. And then, like, some of it was, it sounds crazy, and I know people who are close to this, but the innovation around pizza, frozen pizza was terrible our entire childhoods. Mm-hmm. They've innovated to where you can actually have a good pizza crust. And so, like, I know where I worked at Schnuck's, we had 12 doors of frozen pizza. It's crazy. Like, it's insane.
You wouldn't find that in California.
Yeah. But all kinds of really unique. And there's a woman in St. Louis, Katie Lee, who's got Katie's pizza and pasta, and it's salads, and like, great restaurant. And she's got really, really good frozen product in both spaces, really healthy, Are they clean? And so I just think it's been interesting, and it's also convenience, right? So I used to say, hey, if we're going to have fresh prepared up front so that people can grab and go meals on the way home, put frozen up there too. Put a small bunker, because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be, banquet. It can be like kind of interesting, Kevin's is a great example, for that kind of product profile.
What's interesting, so I started meal prepping a few weeks ago, trying to control my weight, and I was making like fresh vegetable medleys and things, and then I realized, God, if I bought frozen vegetables, I would go from 45 minutes of prep time to 4 minutes of prep time.
Right.
And that's where that is coming in at. I think that there's the waste of the, a lot of the, I guess, consumers, you think of it, started probably millennials, is that we started families much later. So then there's this period of time where you are like just one person buying something, or maybe you're with your, significant other, and some of the pack sizes or some of that, and you just don't get to some of that stuff. And like the amount of time or the speed at which something like a fresh produce or things goes, bad, you're like, oh, I'm wasting this, or I forgot to do this, or whatever. And then I think that the frozen people have just gotten in there, and they've gotten to that point where it's fresh, it's convenient, it has different attributes, like you said, with protein, or it's fitting the needs of what people are now. It's no longer just that like junk, high sodium stuff that was the TV dinners of before. I think that they've really realized, like, this is a great platform. Now, obviously, the route to market maybe is a little bit difficult. Maybe people don't think of that first, but
although it's better.
It's getting better. But I do think like it's a place that probably is going to continuously see innovation. It started probably in 2020, but now it's even gotten more and more. I think the category has grown extensively over that, so it's interesting. I don't know. It's one of those,
and I think COVID brought it back, right? And we put RFID carts, and we had plastic carts, and we put RFID chips in every cart. So I didn't know if you or me were kind of putting, but we knew we could watch the path of carts. And I think it was only, like it was 30 some or 40% never went down the frozen aisle. Like, so guys, we have to move it, because people aren't even walking down here. They aren't seeing what's going on in that space, as an example. Versus like beverage or snack, where you just get a ton of frequency. So it's kind of understanding that, and it's recognizing, as a population, this is a generalization. We're probably lazier, fatter, but want to be healthier, but we want it easier. And so if you just add those things up, you're like, hey, frozen kind of makes sense. Hey, this thing makes sense. Hey, I can drink it. I don't have to take supplements, as Deb said, or have 3 things. I can just drink this and get all this nutrient. Makes it easy. And the number of people I see who get, hey, I get a protein shake, a banana and some blueberries, that's a meal. Great. No one was doing that 10 years ago. So.
Well, thanks so much for sitting down with us, Dave. I really appreciate it. There's 800 people dying to talk to you.
No, nobody wants to. You guys are great. I appreciate it. I love the booth. You should just take this on the road.
It was just a little wider.
Just put this on the back of like a truck and just move it around.
Exactly.
Back of a Rivian.
I don't need the back of a truck. We put an axle under this thing and drag it around.
Have somebody pedal it around, probably.
Right. Exactly. No, it's perfect.
But I hope you enjoyed the first principles thinking that went into my latest YouTube video. If you did, can you do me a favor by hitting that like button? That quick and free action helps YouTube know my content is worth spreading to more people. Also, we're getting really close to reaching my next subscriber goal, and it would be great if you join me on this journey. But to do that, we need to fix the fact that slightly more than 3/4 of you that are watching this video right now are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, and that hurts my feelings. Regardless, I want to thank you for giving me some of your attention and time, and I'll see you on the next one.